If you're trying to support your thyroid with supplements, please be careful. Some of the most popular ones can actually make things worse for your thyroid. Even a lot of the thyroid support pills can block your medications, they can trigger autoimmune flares, or push you into hypothyroidism. My name is Dr. Alan Christianson. I'm a board-certified naturopathic endocrinologist with going on 30 years, believe it or not, experience treating thyroid disease naturally. And I want to talk about the biggest things you want to avoid in supplements for your thyroid health. I want to start with our biggest offender by far, the number one possible villain. So the number one villain would be extra iodine. And this is something that can be so counterintuitive. Your thyroid needs iodine. We can't live without it. It's an essential nutrient. But here's the deal. There is a narrow range of iodine requirements. And for those with the genes making them prone to thyroid disease, the upper limit of that range is lower than it is for other people. That window is probably between about 20 and 200 micrograms for adults prone to thyroid disease. It's easy to get too much, and many people do. When you look at iodine in supplements, many have it added in, and many thyroid support supplements have it added in. This was a good idea decades ago in parts of the world where iodine was deficient, but it's not a good idea anymore in the modern world. We get enough, and many people get too much. And if that's not enough, they've done assays on the amount of iodine found in nutrients. So when it says 100 micrograms on the label and they analyze that, it's probably got 2 or 3 or 400 micrograms. So there's a lot of quality control problems. The biggest thing to look out for is hidden sources of iodine. The next big one to think about is synthetic vitamin A. A lot of supplements use synthetic forms of this, like retinol acetate. These are not only unnecessary, they build up in the liver, and over time they get toxic. Now, this is a thing because those with thyroid disease often can't utilize vitamin A effectively, and when they can't, it can harm the liver, raise the risk for bone loss, and trigger birth defects. Next one is folic acid, and this is crazy. This is a B vitamin, we need it, but folic acid is a cheap synthetic version of folate, which is naturally occurring. People with thyroid disease almost universally have what's called an MTHFR variation. That's a methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase variation, which means they can't always use folic acid. And not only can it not be of benefit, but it can be of detriment to them. It can block their body's own natural chemical pathways. The trick is to focus upon dietary folates, natural methylfolates, other compounds that are more like found in whole foods. These are things that are useful by the body and don't have these same drawbacks. Another big one is an inactive form of B12 called cyanocobalamin. So in the case of thyroid disease, many have a condition called thyrogastric syndrome that makes it hard for them to produce stomach acid. When they have that and they ingest oral cyanocobalamin, they can't make use of it. They can't break it down properly. And they often need more B12, but they can't benefit if they can't absorb proper from it. In those cases, methylcobalamin or adenosylcobalamin are more biologically active. They don't require as much stomach acid for the body to utilize them. Then we think about calcium. Now, this is pretty wild. So calcium, we need this for our bones, but calcium can mineralize. It can help produce healthy bone, or it can calcify. It can make just rocks, just sand and dirt in the body where you don't want it. So if the kind of calcium we're consuming does not dissolve in water, we are more apt to cause it to make calcification than mineralization. Studies have shown that high intakes of insoluble calcium even correlate with a greater risk from heart disease from calcified plaque. Biggest one to think about is calcium carbonate. This is a very common form. It's not always labeled as such. There are products called Algical or bone-derived calcium. They're still calcium carbonate. Your stomach can't break down, and it's hard to absorb and assimilate properly. It's also a problem for thyroid medication absorption. If you're taking it even 4 to 8 hours after thyroid meds, you may not absorb your meds properly. The best workarounds are calcium citrate or calcium citrate malate. These are soluble versions, more like the calcium found in plants, and don't contribute to those calcification reactions. Okay, here's a big one, synthetic B6. This is called pyridoxine HCl, pyridoxine hydrochloride. Now, this one I've seen so many people get really toxic from. You can simply measure your blood levels of B6, and when they're way above range, this is pretty much always the reason why. When your B6 is above range, people get symptomatic. They get nerve damage. They can have numbness and tingling. They can feel anxious. They can have poor digestion, horrible fatigue symptoms. These are very common issues, and many people can run too high on this. Now, there's a different version of B6 called pyridoxal 5-phosphatase. This is a type that doesn't require the conversion that the synthetic form does, and it really doesn't build up in the body in the same ways. It is much safer to use. Other considerations are kelp products or other seaweed products. Now, there's an argument for seaweed being a dense source of minerals. It does contain a lot of minerals, but the drawback goes back to that iodine that I talked about before. I mentioned a healthy upper limit for most adults with thyroid disease of about 200 micrograms per day. A serving of kelp can be 100 times that. We can get way too much from kelp products. And it's been shown that consuming sea vegetables regularly also raises the risk for breast cancers. This can be a big thing, triggering an autoimmune flare or a hyperthyroid storm. So you do want to avoid products that have added kelp or sea vegetable extracts. So thyroid glandulars. Many people require thyroid medications. Natural desiccated thyroid is a category that can work well for some. That is pig-derived thyroid that's been freeze-dried and then standardized so it contains known amounts of T4 and T3. Now, there's stuff that's kind of sort of like that that's non-prescription called thyroid glandular supplements. They're often bovine, meaning cows versus pigs. That's a problem by itself because cow glandulars can contain prions, which are pretty scary when you look at what they can do to the nervous system. But the biggest problem is these things are not standardized at all. There's many products you can just buy over the counter that are a lot like prescription glandular thyroid, but the amount of hormone is just all over the board. We know this because scientists have bought these products over the counter and then analyzed them. And the amount of hormone in one pill versus the next pill is completely different. These things do have active hormones, but not amounts that are predictable at all. If you need thyroid hormones in your body, you're much better off getting them in ways in which you know how much you'll be getting because the amounts matter tremendously. Iron's a big one. So we need iron. Many get too little, but if you don't need it and you're taking it unnecessarily, it's a problem. It can cause harm to the stomach, build up in the liver, and make you not absorb many nutrients effectively. People with thyroid disease, especially women who are menstruating, are probably more likely to be low in iron than high in it. And in those cases, it's not easy to tip into the state of getting excess quickly. It doesn't happen easily. But if you're not menstruating, not a woman, you may not need iron. Iron doesn't work as well when it's part of a multivitamin. It's better to be separate from a multivitamin, otherwise it can make you not absorb things like zinc or selenium quite as well. So speaking of minerals, here's a big one, manganese. It's one that we require, but there have never been documented cases of adults being deficient in that. And there's a lot of evidence of being higher than normal, being a blocker to the thyroid. Somewhere around 5 milligrams per day, you would not want to exceed that from supplemental sources. Doing so has been shown to lower thyroid function and be problematic. Last one to mention is synthetic vitamin E, so alpha tocopherol isolates. Vitamin E is a really complex molecule, and it's much more to think about it like a complex than a thing, kind of like B complex. Ideally, you're getting a range of tocopherol compounds, and these are protective things. They're good for lowering free radical stress. But if we're getting a high amount of just one isolated synthetic form, that doesn't give that full spectrum of protection. And it can actually make oxidative stress worse and not better. So those are the top ones. Those are the top few. The part that makes me nuts is that so often these are included in things made for those with thyroid disease, the very thyroid support products that should be helpful. People try to do well. They try to do natural things to help, and then they get worse, or it's not useful. And they think the natural versions didn't work, and they've got to do medications, they've got to do whatever else. And it's often not that they don't work, they're just not done right. So like anything, they've got to be done correctly. So stay tuned. There's a lot more on my channel about which nutrients can help, which foods can help. The big takeaway is that if you're doing things right, natural approaches can make a big difference. Nearly everyone with thyroid disease can feel better. Many can reverse thyroid disease with the right natural treatments. Don't give up hope. Keep educating yourself and keep moving forward. All right, Dr. C with you. Take great care. Thanks for letting me share this information with you. I look forward to talking again really soon.